Link 6s in Yu-Gi-Oh! You may not think this is going to happen, but in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Reigns anime, they pulled out a Link 6, and that Link 6 is the Arrival Cyberse at Ignister. This card is questionably good if you really think about it, but I want to dissect a Link 6 in Yu-Gi-Oh! What the Arrival Cyberse at Ignister is, what it does, and how it could be translated into the TCG, and realistically, how good will Link 6s be in Yu-Gi-Oh! So in today's video, we're going to go over the potential of a Link 6 in Yu-Gi-Oh! This video is sponsored by TCG Player. If you guys want any Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game card, or any trading card game card in general, make sure to go down into the description and use my TCG Player affiliate link. That would be absolutely amazing, and not only supports them, it supports me as well, and so it's a win-win for everybody. So make sure to use the link in the description. Link 6s, you may not expect this to be the case, you may not think that Link 6s will exist, because we only have one Link 5 in the TCG right now, and I don't blame you. I honestly think this is just going to stay in the anime and not actually go to real life. However, Link 6s could actually happen. We're already getting at Ignister in Ignition Assault, so we may see a Link 6 in the following set after Ignition Assault. Now, will this be the case? I have no clue. I guess we're gonna have to find out. But Link 6s are an interesting concept just because of the fact that they're basically Link 5s or Link 4s or literally whatever. They're just an additional requirement for the Link summon. So for a deck like Cyberse, like Link 5s are super easy to make and Link 6s are super easy to make, but they just need to have good effects. And so with that in mind, let's break down the Arrival Cyberse at Ignister and how this could potentially be translated to the TCG to be really good, and then how we can make that for Yusaku and how we can make a Link 6 for Yusaku really good. So the Arrival Cyberse at Ignister is a Link 6 Cyberse effect monster with arrows top, middle left, middle right, bottom left, bottom right, and bottom. It has a mystery number of attack.
Oh, spooky.
It requires 2+ monsters with 1500 or more attack that have different attributes, and it has the following effect. The original attack of this card becomes 1,000 times the number of Link materials used for its Link summon. Gains 1,000 attack for each card you control. Once per turn, you can place one counter on this card. While this card has a counter, it is unaffected by other card effects. Once per turn, you can target one monster on the field, destroy it, and if you do, special summon one at Ignister token. Dark Cyberse level 1 attack 0, defense 0 to your zone this card points to. The Arrival Cyberse at Ignister is pretty decent. The way I compare it is it's basically a full armored master for the Cyberse archetype. Basically, it gains 1,000 attack for the number of Link materials used. Okay, if you use 2 materials, it becomes 2,000. If you only control the Arrival Cyberse at Ignister, it becomes 3,000. And then it gives itself a counter and makes it unaffected. That's fine. And then you can target a monster on the field, but this is not a quick effect. This is a once per turn effect, and I think this is what's going to kill this card. The fact that it's a once per turn and not a quick effect means that you can target one monster on the field, destroy it, special summon it, add Ignister token. That's fine and everything. I think the problem though with this card is a card like Borrelsword Dragon. Basically, this card has no inherent protection. You can beat over it with a Borrelsword Dragon and just cry. The fact that this card auto loses to Borrelsword Dragon is such a big deal. It needs at least 7,000 attack for it to not die to Borrelsword, which is fine, it can happen, but I think realistically Borrelsword will be able to, well, destroy the Arrival Cyberse at Ignister. Even ignoring that, if you're not playing it, this card is really strong. It can be really hard to deal with for a deck like Sky Striker, for example. Sky Striker and Solomon Great probably are going to have more of a rough time with this card, just because it's going to be harder for them to beat over it. But at the same time, this card's existence does warrant Borrelsword Dragon being played more, especially because this card is so generic. 2+ monsters with 1500 or more attack that have different attributes. That's not that hard to do, realistically, in a deck that Link spams enough. I think the kicker is that it requires different attributes, but realistically, you can just use 2 Link 3s for it. So honestly, I only see this being played in Cyberse because they're just the best deck to summon this, and it's like, you'd rather just summon a Borrelsword or something instead of a Link 6. But yeah, so this card, not that great, especially because the quick effect doesn't protect it on the opponent's turn. You need other forms of disruption, but even then, your opponent can play through it and then summon Borrelsword. Basically, my point is this card is very hard to deal with unless they're playing Borrelsword Dragon, and because Borrelsword is so easily summonable, this card can be dealt with pretty easily. Now, how would I adjust this to the TCG? Realistically, it's a similar summoning requirement to other Adding Nister cards, and I think it fits the criteria of Adding Nister well. I don't think it should gain 1000 attack for each card you control, because that can get a bit overwhelming if you like have Signet Codec and all of that. Basically, the minimum is you want to summon 3 monsters to link for the Arrival Cyberse Adding Nister. So I think just the attack gain based on the number of link materials used is fine. I think the big thing though is, well, first off, I think it should be the once per turn you can place a counter on it. I think that probably should be in place, because going second, this card becomes not nearly as good. One thing I want to address is this card isn't as great going second. Going first, it would be amazing if the once per turn effect is a quick effect, but going second, you're pretty much prone to anything. If you summon this card and they Widow Anchor it, it's not unaffected at that point, so they can take it. So I think at that point, this card becomes a lot more fair. If you impermanence this card, then it dies, then it won't be unaffected. There's a lot of scenarios where this card won't be unaffected if your opponent just hand traps it, which I think makes it a lot more fair. While this card has a counter and is unaffected by other card effects, I think that's, like, again, I realistically think that's fine, because of the fact that if this card doesn't resolve, which it's easy for this card not to resolve, then yeah, it's not unaffected, and then it only has its once per turn destroy a card effect. But I think the last thing I will mention is that the once per turn effect should be a quick effect. I think here's the problem. Cyberse as a deck can link spam. That's not a problem for it. It doesn't link spam crazily, but it can link spam. However, they do not have a good method of link. They cannot link summon enough for a good extra link, and they don't have the win condition that some other decks have. So, if this once per turn effect was a quick effect, that would give Cyberse a good enough win condition for the deck to be tier 1, 100%. While this is fragile, there are ways to play around it. And so if that once per turn effect is a quick effect, this card would be fair because it can be stopped. However, it can still be affected by cards, but if it had that monster removal effect, it would deal with Borrelsword, it would deal with so many things that I 100% feel like this card would be a fair card to have in the game. I think an easy example of a comparison is Masterpiece, and while Masterpiece is banned right now, I think the big difference is Masterpiece is always unaffected by 2 types of cards, whereas this card is able to be stopped. Like, think about it. If you summon Masterpiece and your opponent doesn't have anything to the response of the summon, then it's unaffected. You can't deal with it. However, this card, you can deal with it at a specific point. If they get that counter, it sucks. But if they don't get that counter, you're chilling. So why would this card be unfair if there is an ability to deal with it? Especially with cards like hand traps. There's a lot of ways to deal with it, basically. And I think Cyberse just need a good enough win condition to compete, and this realistically is a good enough win condition to compete with those changes. However, I will say it does, hard once per turn on each effect. If it was just able to once per turn destroy, you could summon multiple, and then you could multiple pop cards. So instead of just having one Link 6, you could have 2 Link 6s on the field and then pop multiple cards. So I think this card, with a few minor changes, would be insane in the actual trading card game and actually put Cyberse in the tier 1 position. But again, they just need those changes and then it would be good. So now with that in mind, what else could a Link 6 entail? Well, I think to start, we would probably get either a Firewall or a Code Talker Link 6. I realistically think there should be a Code Talker Link 6. I think that would be a perfect way to end Yu-Gi-Oh! Reigns, just as a minor ramble. However, realistically, I think there will be a Firewall, maybe Firewall Code Dragon. That would be pretty cool, just combine Firewall and the Code Talkers. I think it'd just be really cool if Firewall and Code Talkers combine, blah blah blah. Anyways, Firewall Code Dragon, that's what I'm gonna call it, okay? So Firewall Code Dragon, Link 6, it basically gains counters for each Code Talker in the grave with different attributes. You get to gain multiple negates at that point. So with every counter on it, you gain multiple negates. If you have 2 Code Talkers in the grave with different attributes, it gains 2 negates. It cannot be targeted by card effects. And the last thing is it can negate monster effects by removing a counter, but you can only use that effect twice per turn. So I realistically think like a card like that would be really good. It's not like impossible to kill because obviously it can be destroyed by card effects and whatever, but it gives the deck a good enough win condition. This could be changed depending on the circumstance. Realistically, Cyberse just need like, I really do feel like with the changes that the Arrival Cyberse adding Nister would be a perfect win condition for Cyberse to put them on the spot in the tier 1 position. But if we were going with the Code Talker route, I think a monster that could negate monster effects, or realistically just any card, would be great. Just some form of protection as well. And lastly, it could be related to the Code Talkers, just because I feel like the Code Talkers don't have a win condition, and I feel like it would just mix everything perfectly. Anyways, if a Link 6 was in Yu-Gi-Oh, that would be pretty wild. If we got 2 Link 6s in Yu-Gi-Oh, that would be even more crazy, just because of the fact that we only have 1 Link 5 in the game right now. Do I expect us to get another Link 5 in the set after Ignition Assault? Potentially. However, that doesn't change the fact that I don't necessarily see Link 6s existing just because there's so little Link 5s, but I could be wrong. And if there is a Link 6 in Yu-Gi-Oh, this is the potential of a Link 6 in Yu-Gi-Oh! Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to check out my Patreon if you enjoy my content and want to support me and see these videos continue. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and like this video if you enjoy my content. And with that, guys, I hope to see you soon.